Syria's governments condemned claims by Washington it used chemical weapons as a, quote, caravan of lies based on fabricated information. Damascus also accuses the White House of double standards in dealing with terror after it announced it would send weapons to the rebels. The U.S. could impose a no-fly zone over parts of Syria as well. RT's Guy Chikian has more from Washington.
The White House says its decision to arm Syrian rebels is based on intelligence that the Assad government has used chemical weapons. Damascus denies the allegations. Washington cites its own intelligence community as well as French and British intelligence. A U.S. official who declined to be identified told the media here that according to a CIA report, the U.S. has acquired blood, urine, and hair samples from 2 Syrian rebels, 1 dead and 1 wounded. And according to the CIA report, those 2 rebels were exposed to nerve agent sarin. Brian Becker is here with me today to talk about, thank you, what the administration tries to present as definitive evidence that the Assad government has used chemical weapons. We don't know much about the evidence that they have, but this report about 2 rebels, do you think that could be enough for the CIA to come up with definitive conclusions?
Well, no, the evidence is dubious. It's very scant, in fact, but it's really not about the evidence. It's not even about weapons of mass destruction. It's not about sarin nerve gas. There's been an acknowledgement in Washington that if you want to take this country to war, either by bombing another country or intervening or occupying, raise the specter of weapons of mass destruction, and that's the ticket in order to get massive media coverage justifying an escalation, and that's what's going on. There's been a decision taken by the White House to escalate. This is just a red herring, not a red line.
The phrase that we often hear in Washington these days is, we need to tip the balance in the other direction, meaning in the direction of the rebels. But behind that technical sounding phrase, tipping the balance, is a lot of killing that would have to be done to achieve that goal, right? To what lengths do you think the U.S. is ready to go to achieve a desired outcome in Syria?
Tipping the balance is just a euphemism and, in fact, bizarre and ridiculous. The fact of the matter is this civil war, which has taken 93,000 lives according to the United Nations, was fueled by outside forces, Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. Who are they? They're the proxies or allies of the United States and Britain and France, NATO powers. They've been funneling arms into Syria, creating the conditions for civil war, in fact, promoting civil war. I would say they have a lot of blood on their hands.
Senator McCain is a very active supporter of an aggressive U.S. intervention in Syria. And he's everywhere now on all news channels applauding the administration's decision to arm the rebels. In one of the interviews, he suggested that he'd tolerate extremists taking over Syria because they would not be allied with Iran. And it's not just him who constantly mentions Iran in the context of these discussions. How much of this is about Iran, in your opinion?
Well, John McCain's comments are very interesting, but not unusual. If you look back at the last 30 years, the United States has made the "my enemy's enemy is my friend" the theme of its foreign policy. It armed Osama bin Laden and the Mujahideen against the Afghan government because it was a socialist government and aligned with the Soviet Union. McCain is a cheerleader for war, but what is the real goal? Yes, Iran is the target. Iran ultimately, because of its alliance with Syria, its alliance with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Ultimately, the U.S. wants to destroy Assad, to weaken Hezbollah, and finally destroy the Islamic Republic of Iran. Not because it wants a more democratic Iran, but because it wants a puppet government, a proxy, like they used to have when they had the Shah.
The fear is that the message that the rebels will receive with the weapons is not go sit down and talk. The message will be go fight and kill, which kind of kills the chances of a political solution, doesn't it? Brian Becker, anti-war activist in Washington. I'm Ganesh Chekan.
Russia also unconvinced by Washington's chemical weapons findings, saying it would make no sense for Assad to deploy a toxic arsenal. Foreign Minister Lavrov slammed Washington's decision to arm the rebels too, saying it undermined peace efforts. RT's Alexei Arshevsky has more.
The Russian foreign minister revealed that it was very regrettable that when the allegations of Syrian rebels using chemical weapons at the town of Aleppo were made public by the Syrian government, in fact it asked the UN Commission to investigate. Nothing was eventually done, but only when the allegations of the Syrian government using the chemical weapons appeared that experts started to conduct a certain investigation on this matter. Lavrov also revealed that for some time his partners in the West West and Israel have been saying all along that the Syrian government would only use chemical weapons if it's backed against the wall. That's why using the chemical weapons by the government right now makes no sense whatsoever from the military point of view.
The Syrian regime hasn't been pushed into the corner. The regime, according to the rebels, is advancing on the ground. What's the point of the regime using chemical weapons, and in such small amounts? All to set itself up?
With the chemical weapons usage by the Syrian government, the alleged chemical weapons usage now being hotly debated across the Atlantic, as well as the calls to arm the Syrian rebels, Lavrov said that he didn't believe that the red line, the so-called red line, was actually crossed. First of all, because what the United States believes to be the proof of Assad using chemical weapons is not a substantial proof at all, mainly because the proof-gathering process itself was not made in accordance with international regulations.
There are certain rules of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which suggest that samples of blood, urine, clothes and soil can be classed as evidence only if these samples were collected by the organization's experts, and if these experts controlled the samples en route to laboratories. Our US colleagues failed to assure us that these procedures were adhered to.
Lavrov also reminded that recently, allegedly 12 people from the al-Nusra front of Syrian rebels were detained in Turkey carrying chemical weapons. Also, unconfirmed reports of chemical weapons being produced in Iraq for the Syrian rebels. Lavrov found it very regrettable as well that these reports, even despite being unconfirmed, did not cause any concerns in the West.
We'll keep you fully up to date with the chemical weapons allegations involving both sides of Syria's conflict. Among other things, our website looks at the UN Commission report from a month ago revealing suspicions that the opposition, not the government, was behind the use of sarin gas in Syria. Click on RT.com for that and much more.